The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you that people who use psychedelics mindfully across all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
So today I have the honor of introducing Dr. Michael Villanueva, and I will can you do your code so I can, sorry. I will quickly read his bio so that you guys can get a sense of his story.
Did I send that to you?
You did, yeah, I got it. So, Dr. Michael Villanueva, former U.S. Army combat psychologist, heads the Alpha Theta Center, a neurofeedback and QEEG analysis company. In 2011, he took neurofeedback into combat, discovering how effective and easy it was to administer neurofeedback to soldiers. Obtaining a dramatic reduction in base usage of psychiatric medications, he later returned to San Diego, opening the Alpha Theta Center. However, in 2015, a client's QEEG appended his understanding of the EEG and neurofeedback by suggesting unexpected powerful effects of ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT on the client's brain. Maintaining his clinical practice and working with engineers from the Swartz Center for Computational Neuroscience, he analyzes EEGs of those undergoing psychedelic experiences and uses those insights both to inform his practice and to guide further research. So as the title suggests, he was traditionally a military psychologist that somehow got swept up into the psychedelic field, a late and unexpected journey into psychedelics. So without further ado, Dr. Michael Villanueva.
I suppose I should stop texting. I'm trying to turn on a timer so
I got it.
You got it?
I'm
Sure?
keeping track of it.
Okay.
I will let you know when you have
All right.
10 and 5 minutes left.
That was my way of avoiding looking up and activating my mirror neuron system. Oh boy. I really mean this when I say thank you for being here. I'm 62, and 3 years ago I never thought that I would be here doing this. I'm fairly certain, however, that each one of you asked for this meeting to happen. In fact, I'm effing positive about it. So I am here because you asked me to be here. That sounds convoluted, but with what's happened over the last 3 years, I am positive about this. Do I stand here?
Yeah.
Is this my better side?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for being here. I probably made way too many slides. But so what this story is about, and it's an awkward one, but this really captures kind of what happened. You can't practice what you do. If you want to really know what you're doing, you have to do the most violent rape possible and force yourself into who you are and into your field. And it's an act of violence. It is. So go ahead and slip that, do this, or what do I do? Do I go click? Okay.
Yeah.
So I split this into 4 acts, probably because when I was at Berkeley, I was a literature and Shakespeare major. So I thought, I can't stand PowerPoint. So I thought, it's a play. That'd be the thing to capture the ear of the king, right? And I did, like I said, 62, this is not what I thought was going to happen to me. I pretty much was set to go down the drain with everybody else my age. Well, not everybody here, of course. See, the problem is, 3 weeks ago, I went before my peers in Santa Barbara and delivered a little bit of the same stuff. And those of you that are my age remembers, or maybe you don't remember, what it was like in the 60s and 70s and be a faggot, be a homosexual, and come out of the closet. It was like a big thing back then. Now it's like not a big thing. So for me to go before everybody that I knew, they had said, what happened to Michael? He disappeared 3 years ago, so I came out of the closet. This is worse because you guys have far more experience in this field than I do. Those people, my peers, doctors and medical doctors and psychologists, they didn't know what the hell I was saying, so they believed everything I said, which is cool. You guys have experience, and so now it's like the child coming to the parent and saying, did I pass? Did I pass? Give me my next one, please. Let's go. Okay, so it's difficult because this is a personal story. It's important because after I did the toad 2 years ago, nothing was the same, and I had to communicate. I'm going to talk a lot more about that from a neuroscience perspective, and it's highly personal. So I feel like I'm dropping my drawers in front of everybody, and that's a very uncomfortable feeling. And there is science in this, and I'm sorry about that, but it really is there. And I don't know how many people here, I'm not going to have to raise your hand. I mean, I'm going to talk about the past Fourier transformation, the limitations on how we look at the brain, and it's going to get really technical. So if that upsets you, I'm sorry. It doesn't mean that I'm some asshole touting science. It means that this is what I had to go through to get here. And it was tough because I had to go back to the Khan Academy and learn how to do fractions in order to learn matrix and linear algebra. It was embarrassing because I thought I was cool and knew stuff, and I didn't. And the toad showed me how ignorant I am and will always be. Next one, please. So it's a hard story. So June 2014, Molly, heroin, QEEG, and the puzzle. How are these related? Molly was my client in neurofeedback. Parents paid a lot of money over the year for her to come to me, and I was doing my thing, and she was kind of getting better, getting worse, getting better, getting worse, getting better. Next slide. Well, you don't have to read all this, but you know, it should be 12 months. I got a phone call from the mom saying, our daughter's addicted to heroin. We want you to research ibogaine because we're thinking of sending her to Mexico to a psychedelic clinic. So what do? I'm on the phone, and in my arrogance, I Google ibogaine, and I Google psychedelics. And as I'm talking to her, I'm multitasking, doing this other thing, and she goes, we want you to investigate. And I said, no, it's not a good idea. Psychedelics kill people. That's the first thing out of my mouth. Seriously, that's what I said. And not only that, but ibogaine has been responsible to this date, because I always pride myself on having up-to-date knowledge, and I just had Google give it to me 24 seconds ago. At this point, I think 23 people have died from ibogaine. So I would not do it, it's dangerous. She gave me a compliment and said, you know, we really respect your work and we respect your abilities as a scientist. Would you please look into this? In other words, we're paying you, shut up, do your work, right? That was Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon. Monday morning, I called her back at 8 o'clock and I said, I'm terribly sorry, I was wrong. If this was my daughter, I would send her down right away. It's a risk assessment. She's shooting up. You have nothing to lose. Well, you said people die. It's true. Ibogaine, and I'm not an expert in this, so don't hold me, but ibogaine is an alkaloid derivative of iboga. It's highly dose dependent upon body mass. If you give too much and it's hard on the heart, people have died. That's accurate, but some of the reports were a little dicey. So I ate my words, and she said, please, would you take her down there and escort her? I said, okay. That's an interesting request. I will go to Mexico. I thought, do I have a passport? Am I going to get robbed? Well, it was a butterfly effect when I went down the crossroads. Give me the next one. They were excited. I was excited. I talked to them. I showed them cues for the first time. It was, ooh, sexy, sexy, sexy. It was just awesome. It was wonderful. You know, we're going to collaborate. We have clients coming in. We'll send you our next 2 clients. And you'll do a pre and a post, and based on all that information, we're going to go out and get tons of funding. We had meetings up in San Diego, and it was all a bunch of fun. Go ahead and give me the next one, please. Well, here's the puzzle that happened. Actually, I deleted the graphic because I felt I had too many slides. I did 2 clients. This is important. It's going to make a big difference later on when I talk about the first client was addicted to meth and cocaine, or cocaine and meth, I don't know which one. His problem was that he couldn't maintain vigilance. In my world, in the QEEG world, the mammalian brain, the human brain, should be able to stay awake, eyes open, eyes closed. And when you do an eyes closed recording, 10 minutes of 19 channel, the person should be able to maintain vigilance. All right? Hello. Do not even be embarrassed. Come on in. Don't even walk slowly because we'll all watch you, especially me. So, couldn't maintain an awake state. That's a real problem. So this person's been taking drugs to maintain an awake state. How did I know he could not maintain an awake state? If you know what a vertex wave is, you should not have one at CZ within 90 seconds of an eyes closed recording. that means stage 2 sleep. Like literally, like eyes are open and nobody's home kind of thing, right? So vigilance was a problem. The other gal, that was really interesting. She clocks in at 10.4 hertz at mu, which really means that her system is overamped, over-aroused. She is ready to rock and roll. I mean, I wish I had a 10.4 hertz at the back of my head. I know a couple people in this room that easily surpass 10.4. The problem after 10 is that it's hard for the brain to kind of ramp down. So she was addicted to opiates, right? So 10.4 hertz at PZ with a mu owl looking at me, and the owl at the mu at PZ really means that the mirror neuron is not working, which means that the frontal lobes are not working. They both did ibogaine, they both did 5-MeO-DMT. I do a post 48 hours later, and this guy's vigilance is gone, and she clocks in at 8.79, and her mirror neuron network is not working. So people pay me to train them. There's no way in hell none of my neurofeedback, after maybe 10, 12 months, could have done that. Certainly not in 48 hours. So the big question was, how can one intervention regulate 2 different neurophysiological, what did I say, signatures, I like that word, in 96 hours? This made no sense to me. This is like Caitlin and I going to a doctor. She has a broken leg. I'm a depressed idiot. We take one pill, her leg is cured, and I'm amazing. It just isn't going to happen. My intellectual toolkit in 2015 was pretty dismal. I couldn't do multiplication. I couldn't do long division. I knew advanced statistics, but I didn't have to know it because I could press a button and be cool. I knew Latin. I knew some Greek. I knew a lot of Shakespeare. And I knew something about the cube, but that was it. I just knew there were 19 channels, and I could do some analysis, and I could make a living. So that was the extent of my knowledge. Give me the next one. So this is a pre and a post. Now I understand that you don't understand what this means, but in my field, my brain does not look this good. This is heroin pre, and this is post. You really don't see a lot of difference. You don't. There's like a little less amplitude asymmetry, but you actually have more pathology according to my world. There's more theta. There's some high beta there. We have a little less alpha in the rear. Does anybody know what an FFT is? Just thank you. That's for one person. Okay. This is hard to explain because I'm not that good at this stuff, but if you took your favorite recording and added up all the bass notes, all the treble notes, mid-range notes, and put them in a little graph over 10 minutes, that's an FFT. It's a fast Fourier transformation. You're kind of stacking up all your little hertz across little bins. And then what we do is we make these topographical representations like, okay, here there's a little bit too much beta, the white's norm, we can norm it to z-scores, and it's all fancy. So that's an FFT. So this didn't tell me anything, but I was impressed that I did it, and they saw this and wanted to do a Kickstarter campaign. And meanwhile, everything in me was going, what is going on? Give me the next one please. And so this, if you only knew, this is 10.74 hertz, mu. The mirror neuron, it's just like it's not working. And she's got 8.79, which is really slow. That's slow. I mean, that's like kind of Walmart. Hi, my name is Michael. You know, kind of like I'm 65 and I've been drinking for a long time. Kind of slow. But that was fine. So it normalized. It just doesn't happen. So that was the puzzle in one thing. So next. There we go. So the problem is that nothing for me was working in 2015. This is probably one of the darkest months of my life. They wanted to do this campaign. I couldn't bring myself to make pretty pictures for money. I will sell my body for money, but I couldn't do it with pretty pictures. But I met Sandra. And I started collaborating with her, and I started maybe sending some of my clients thinking I was going to lose my license at any moment to do ayahuasca and the toad with her. And she's a nurse down there, and she started guiding me, you should do this, you should do this. I said, no, I don't do that. I don't smoke pot, I don't do that. And the other thing is that I kept talking to my friends, people that knew, vendors, and they were saying crap like, well, the brain is like this. If you do this, then the brain does this. If you pulse PEMF here into the frontal lobes at 10 hertz, then the brain makes a resonant frequency. So there was all these metaphors that were bouncing around in my head, and nothing was working. Give me the next one, please. So then the toad stepped in, and this was rather fortuitous. It was August 9th. I was going to be 60 that night. I decided not to Google it, because if I Googled anything, I became terrified. All I knew it was short acting, be over and done with, and I would then have done it, and maybe something would be different. Give me the next one, please. So I went down to, next one. I went down to, and let me hold it right there for a minute. I went down and I did it. I'll talk about that later, because this is not about me talking about me. It's about what happened. The next day, I mapped Sandra. Now this is a 20-minute continuous recording, and if you know FFT, you go, well, that's really interesting. Looks like there's some muscle movement. You know, we can't take out muscle movement in NeuroGuide. We got these really strong spikes here at T4. So all that's bullshit. That's all probably muscle. What do we have here at the midline? Not a whole lot. Give me the next one. Now this was interesting. This is when I went WTF. Blue means, in my world, 3 standard deviation scores below the mean. So what that means is like there's no power. There is no power. There's no power. It's like the lights just went out all over San Diego and it's blue. So the little red at the back is probably muscle tension, a little tension here in the ears, and this extends all the way up into the gamma range. Now that's an FFT for you. And that's when I knew I was screwed. Because this didn't tell me anything except, once again, here's more of the mystery. We have two different interventions. And I remember when she did this, she came out of it, looked at me and said how much she loved me, hugged me. She felt different, her energy signature was different, you know, and I was like, wow, what happened? Give me the next one, please. So this was pivotal. I was pretty pissed at this point. November came along. I had done it in August, and something in me was building to a point that I was about to explode. I was on fire and nowhere to go. Has anybody ever felt like that? There's nobody to talk to. You can't talk to your peers because they're going to think you're crazy. I tried talking to my daughter, and she told me I was crazy. There wasn't a woman that I was kind of close enough with to be so brave. But the knowledge of different things that I was feeling was just frying my brain. I said, I got to do something different. And so I went into the vortex, which is a really cool slide. I like that brick because it means that the brick is now moving and there's light. Give me the next one, please. So, and I don't know why it does that. Again, please. Okay, so what did I want to know about the brain and psychedelics? I sat down and talked about it, thought about it really hard. Clicky, clicky. Okay. So how does the human brain organize and share information during a psychedelic state? That was what I wanted to know. You can give a crap about the FFT. Okay? Fuck the FFT. I wanted to know what was going on. And secondly, how do these entheogens, these plant medicines, these substances facilitate deep personal transformation? I sent a highly placed client of mine at great personal risk to see Sandra. And this person came back to me and said to me, I feel your pain. We cannot give this to our patients. I went, dude, thank you. Transformed. Absolutely transformed. I looked at the PubMed. There's hardly any EEG reached in psychedelics. It's all MRI, fMRI studies. There's a real problem with that we'll get into later. And all I had was a little cheap-ass 19-channel amp, which actually turned out to be really very, very well made. Nick Dogris up at Neurofield, Brad, they made a phenomenal amp that cost $4,000. That's what I had been using, and it turns out it was actually a very good one. So what am I going to do with this? Next one, please. I went to the Center for Computational Neuroscience. I thought these people can help me out. They've got thousands of publications. They're going to help me. They don't have a commercial interest. Have you ever been with people that are really, really, really smart and you cannot ask a question that makes sense to yourself? It happened to me. It was the most embarrassing moment in my life. I was sitting there saying all the stuff I knew about cross-frequency coupling, alpha, beta, gamma, phase, coherence. I was doing all this. And they were so kind. They were silent. And that silence, I stopped talking and I was like, okay, I haven't lost my social skills. Something's really shifted here. And one person said, I have to go, excuse me, it's really nice meeting you, Dr. Villanueva. I didn't even have a skill set to ask an intelligent question. And that was probably the most humbling moment in my life. Several of the people in the room have what we call an O1 visa. Do you know what that is? O1 visa is when you're so smart, the US government says you're just so freaking amazing, you just come here and be here. And these were people like your age and your age, and it's just was embarrassing. But one person kind of reached out later on, and we started working together. Next one, please. So I got introduced to independent component analysis, source localization, and connectivity, and a bunch of other stuff. And I kind of, after being in the military, when you're on a mission and the mission goes wrong, you do what you call an after-action review. You know, what went right, what went wrong, and I realized everything I'd been taught had to go away. It was useless. I had to study my ass off. Neurofeedback was on a vector. I had no idea where they were going, but it wasn't the party that I wanted to join. It wasn't going to help me understand what happened to me, to my clients, or what was going on with the toads. So I threw myself into EEG lab, understanding articles that I just couldn't read. I hired a tutor. I had several assistants. These people came over on the weekend. They worked with me. I was up every morning at 5 just trying to get my chops down. Give me my next one, please. So, what is the technical problem of getting a psychedelic recording, a good one? Yeah, if you do LSD, you're going to be there for 12 hours, and I'm not going to sit around for that. But 5-MeO, we got rapid dynamic alterations of cognition, emotion, and sensorium. Exploration of the EEG can maybe reveal how the brain organizes and shares information. The other problem is that the use of psychedelics introduces highly kinetic movement. And we actually have Christian Koth at SCCN, Swartz Center for Computational Neuroscience, wrote an amazing program called Artifact Subspace Removal Reconstruction. And we were able to run this algorithm, which will then extract the EEG from all the movement. Actually, on Mobi devices, what they can do now is people driving cars, whatnot, demonstrations on YouTube. If you look at that, you can see people doing this, and the EEGs all being extracted. It's really great. So we had to use this. Give me my next one. I went back down to Mexico and got 5 continuous recordings. And the key difference here, and I'm jumping the gun a bit, was I capped them at 0.0. They sat quietly for 10 minutes, eyes closed, inhaled, because they knew what they were doing. I don't see how they did this. Inhaled, and then sat for another 20 minutes. So we had a 30-minute recording. So we're able to measure what changed in the brain during that 30 minutes. That's a little bit what we're going to talk about. I was interested in connectivity. I'm not a neuroscientist, and I hate it when I get introduced as a neuroscientist. And I've really taken Razam to task for that. And when I see my peeps say neuroscientists on their website, I want to throttle them, because I've worked with real neuroscientists, and I'm not one of them. I wish I was, but I'm not. But I also knew that in order to get an information flow, we had to do a source analysis. And information flow to me was a cat's meow, because whatever's going on in the brain I felt might be found there, even though there's a lot of limitations with EEG. Give me my next one, please. So I know it's technical, but what I'm saying here, you got 3 types of connectivity. You have anatomical connectivity, right, together. You have functional connectivity, that's what you see with fMRIs. And you have affective connectivity. And that's where we get into granular causality, which is really cool, which is what we got into, and renormalized partial directed coherence and all sorts of stuff. But what we wanted to know is, if this does this do this? If this does this do this? And if you think about 2 ants, I think Tim Mullen has this example, following a trail, you think that ant A is leading ant B. But they're both following a pheromone. If you kill ant A, the other one will still keep going. That's why the causal correlation stuff is really tough. But the granular causality mathematical models that we use really can tell based on the time delay and the harmonic of the frequency, if one frequency is really communicating with another. Give me my next one, please. So, why would we want to put ICA with the psychedelic state? And I warned you, this is where it does get a little technical. Every channel up here is a linear mixture. And that's kind of not that hard to explain. You have a heartbeat, you read that on EEG. You have your breathing, you're reading that in EEG. You got a twitch, you read that in EEG. Every biological signal in the body has its own electrical time series chunk of data. And what ICA does, it extracts those components out. So for example, there's one mic going on here, there's nothing to extract, but if somebody in the back kept yelling, you suck, you suck, you suck, it gets mixed in with it. It's a linear mixture. Here I am talking all this good stuff, and you're hearing you suck, it's all mixed together. ICA can separate those components out. And it does that, and like I said, this one electrode here is actually reading a summation of all of these. This might be closer, so the arrow's thicker. You have volume conduction. You have blood vessels that are different sizes, so it's a mess. And where my field has gone astray, it thinks because you put an electrode up there at CZ and it's measuring alpha at 10 hertz, that's what you got. And that's not accurate. That's like me thinking that's a real brain and shooting it from here. It's a projection. We now know that generators in the brain over here project over here. And this electrode picks it up. So it's like, wow, but my field, no. They think, oh, we trained this and we cured the person. It's like, next. It's not really cutting hairs. But once these sources, this is the magic. And this is complicated and I won't spend a lot of time here, but you have to get this, please. Once these sources are localized, we can spatially project them on a real brain model. This is really an important point. Once these components are separated, mathematically there is a way to localize these sources. These are independent sources. It's like sources of energy. Like there's a light bulb spinning, there's a group, there's one over there, it all has its own power spec. I don't know where my field is and why they're not paying attention to this, but this was like, you know, if the heavens were to open and go, whoa, this is it. So this decomposed time series data can be shown as a power density graph. Go ahead and give me the next one. So before, this is FFT stuff, right? This is what we think we know. This is where we think that is, but that's not true. Give me the next one. Oh, not that one. Actually, what I did was, this is pretty funny. I was wondering if rap really had an FFT distribution. So I looked up, I Googled, what kind of words are used in rap songs on the East Coast versus West Coast? And you can see that shit, fuck, and niggas and nigga comes right next to never, and then think and love. So that was really interesting. I was trying to give a visual demonstration of the FFT, and I told Jake, I meant to delete that. Give me my next one. But that's the point of an FFT. It's limited. But here we have a power spectrum. Independent component 3. We can tell this is real EEG. Here we have 0 to 40 hertz. Then we got a bump about 10 hertz. So this is real stuff. This is real stuff. And that's component number 3 is going to be pretty important later on. So we can tell which frequencies are strong, which frequencies are weak. We're starting to kind of look into the mess here. Next one, please. So we can separate mixed signals and we can take out non-brain artifacts, and because of this, we can now measure connectivity between sources, which is really kind of cool because that's a shifting of information flow. It is not content. It is not, hello, my name is Michael. It's not like that. We can't do that at this point. Give me my next one, please. But what we can do is we can take these components and we can use the Montreal Neurological Institute, the MNI template, and we can now map them, model them on. I actually have that on MATLAB. Actually, those things rotate. That's all right. Go to the next one.
Next one here?
Yeah, the next one's fine. So this is where we are now. How am I doing on time? Am I kind of cool, or am I yakking too much?
I can't read.
Jake?
It's 8:20.
That really tells me a lot.
You have about 20 minutes.
Okay, good. We're almost done. So these are the projects that we've done other ones in there, but these are the ones I'm going to touch on. We have the continuous, we have the microdose study, we have the pre-post, 5-MEO pre-post Australian data set. P. Gast is a guy I met down in, he's from Iceland. El Galitz, I met her down in Costa Rica, and then there's me. Next. And so what I did with the continuous, I got an N of 4, we talked about this. Let me have the next one, please. This is just kind of saying that we have to pre-process the data. But when you're dealing with psychedelic data, you just can't record it and look at it. You have to filter it. You have to treat it really carefully so you can run a lot of analysis on this. If you think I knew how to do all this 2 years ago, you're crazy. This is like throwing yourself into your art and dying on your sword. This is not what I signed up for. But this thing keeps driving me and driving me. And then we did a first principle component of the ICs, and then we ran SIFT. And I'm going to show you the data on it. So we took all the components from the continuous, got them there, we got rid of the bad ones, threw out the bad ones, and these we felt were really good. They matched, they looked real. Give me the next one, please. We mapped them onto the brain. Give me the next one, please. And we looked at now the power analysis of the sources. And this is where my first myth of psychedelics just flushed into the toilet. How many people here psychedelics expand the brain? I know it's a trick question. It doesn't. And I don't know what expand means in your world, but in my world it means Jesus, baby Jesus, Buddha, God. You're expanded out there, your brain's more. No. This was the baseline recording. Delta, power, plummets. Theta close behind it. Alpha and beta cross-coupled. That's really striking. That means if I push here, something comes up over here. They are tied together like Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. It was extraordinary. They hang out together. They're best of bros. They just, hey man, shake hands. We're cool. And gamma power goes through the roof. How many people here think gamma is sexy? It's the scene of consciousness. That's my field thinks this. Gamma this, gamma that. Well, the power goes through the roof. So we thought when we got this is amazing. But that's actually not quite true. If you have Alzheimer's, you're going to make a lot of gamma. Parkinson's, you're making a lot of gamma. So gamma power doesn't mean that much. Actually, it can be pathology because it's not nested. And if you know how gamma and the frequencies work, when gamma is nested within the scallops of theta, that's actually content. So something was going on here. Let me have the next one. So we got really creative, and we looked at the information flow. And this is where I just lost my shirt. I remember when we got this, I got up and walked out of the room. I said, quit, that's it, that's it, that's it, I'm done. This is gamma. This is information. It's gone. There's nothing there. Now this is hard to explain because you're going to see a graph later. It's not that there's nothing there, it's that there's actively nothing there. And there's actively nothing there for 20 minutes. If you know anything about neural networks, they shift faster than my daughter can change the top of the 21 Forever sale. The networks shift like crazy. And delta content, delta information, absolutely skyrockets. Next one, please. So this was a really interesting puzzle, and I don't have an answer. So it's all fresh and hot off the press. We haven't published this yet. Give me a next one, please. It's not good lighting in here. You can't see this. But what we did was we took the components and ran a matrix, a SIFT analysis, and looked at kind of who's talking to who. You can see up here all that gamma content between independent component 1 and independent component 3. Gone. There's no information flow. Let me have the next one, please. We looked at this in more detail. I know it kind of looks like bad watercolors, but it makes a lot of sense. Again, there's content there in the 10 minutes, and then it's gone on both sides. And it's not just one. It's like, put your hand up, Caitlin. Now push. It's like both sides are pushing it against each other and saying, we're not going to talk. We're not going to communicate. Now the question is, where are these two components? One of them's deep in here, the other one's right up here. Prefrontal cortex. Now that's really curious. Brodmann area 11, and below that, what is that area involved with? Encoding memory, personality integration, who you are. You don't have to answer it, but to me this was the first clue. The first thought I had, 2 to 3 seconds after Sandra said, count backwards from 10, before I heard her voice go away, I remember this thought. I just lost radio contact with myself. And the second thought that came in is, how can I think that thought and not be in contact with myself? And that's the last thing I remember. Next. So this is kind of important. You can't, God, these lights. Can we turn these lights down just for a second? Is that possible? It's a movie. I'm sorry, I know you're hot and it's like we need to stop, and I'm sorry. But I wanted to, is this a little bit better? Don't worry about it, Caitlin, I'm going to run it anyway. This is the brain here. These are the components mapped. I want you to keep an eye on these two, right? This is 10 minutes. At this point, this is a 10-minute point, and this is while on it. This is Granger causality, SIFT, it's Tim Mullen's creation. It's a really cool toolbox. Goes with the EEG lab. I don't think you need a component of MATLAB. I think it'll run with global optimization. I don't remember, it doesn't matter. But keep an eye on these two. Blue means that there's very little information in that source, and these are directionality. See little needles, like this one is communicating the flow is going this way. Watch these two. Go ahead and just press the thing. Let me do it because it's a movie, and please work. Don't make a fool out of me. Okay. Just, yeah, watch these two guys there. Remember, that's 10 minutes.
This is pre-smoking, right?
Right.
Okay.
And she's going to hit at 10. She's going to take a hit.
And then 5 meal.
Yeah. Thank you. Look at that. What you don't understand is that every frame is 20 seconds because we only have 19 channels. These guys, something's going on there. It's mutual exclusion. I don't know how to explain it. I don't have an understanding for this. But the frontal lobes are completely offline. I think, yeah, the first people that have seen, I know I showed that to you a long time ago. Next, please. So, I went down to Australia. I did pre-post. Again, searching for answers. Next, please. And we used something called measure projection analysis by Bigley Shamalo. And this is really cool. This is the latest thing out of the Swartz Center for Computational Neuroscience. The problem is if you have a group of people over here, did this, and then you have another group of people over here and did this. They used to try to compare independent components. That was extremely difficult. What we do, or they do now, is they take shared voxels of dynamic energy, and we can map them very clearly. And we had these domains that were after the 5-MeO exposure. They went down there with Octavio Redick. I was down there for, 10 days. It was about an N of 22. We ran a bunch of statistical tests. Give me the next one, please. And only this one survived. This is the angular gyrus, and this is what was really striking. Alpha was higher in the post, and gamma was lower. Gamma power was lower. Now, if you know anything about BOLD, blood oxygen utilization levels, right? Okay, so BOLD is negatively correlated with gamma, but positively correlated with alpha. The only thing I can think of, and this was in the angular gyrus, and it only happened under eyes closed conditions. The angular gyrus is like one of the major hubs in the brain. It integrates personality, it integrates higher concepts of mathematics. It does a lot. It's pretty important. And whatever that area is, if I were to ask my best guess with gamma, now power very, very low, is that the metabolic rate in there is higher, which means that those networks are operating more efficiently. But we haven't done a cross-frequency correlation to see if that's accurate. Next, please. Then we did the microdose study, and Caitlin was really, really helpful with that. I had a lot of high hopes for that, and it didn't work out really well. There were issues. It was sloppy on my end. There were too many variables that were loose. But there was a lot of good work in planning. We had risk scales, we had Beck scales, we had continuous performance tests, and I've run a lot of statistical tests on the data. Nothing is held up, except one thing that is held up. And I'm going to get to that later, because that's really striking to me. Can I have the next one, please? So, where am I now? What are my takeaways, and what is this project? What does each project suggest? I can tell you right now, visually, from a neuroscience perspective, There's no pattern here. But I think there is a pattern, we're just not looking in the right place. Let me have the next one, please. So, takeaway. The toad, at least in me, produced a profound, overwhelming drive to understand and communicate my experience. It led me into computational neuroscience like I've never, ever been before, never thought I could achieve. Let me have the next one. Fundamentally, it taught me how crude language is. And those of you that have experienced visionary tryptamines, language completely truncates incredible experiences. And there's an issue there that the brain at some point must have had a different way of knowing other than language. Why do I say that? How old is language? What, 50, 60,000 years old? How long have anatomically humans been around like this? What, 150, 200,000 years? So there's other ways of possibly communicating, but I can't, it's a little bit of personal information, maybe TMI. After I did it the first time, I was like, OMG, and I can't believe I did this. I went down a week later and did it again. And it was in the second time that I was struck by how crude, when I tried to speak the words and the complexity of thought. I remember thinking, every thought I'm having knows where it came from, knows where it's going, and knows where it will be. And there was this interconnectedness and thought. Nothing in language at all gets at that. Give me my next one, please. So independent components, not power, is a new currency, and understanding effective connectivity. I think we need to think of effective connectivity as market demand in the brain. Who needs to know what when? And connectivity is associated with that. The field is focused on alpha, theta, that just power levels are irrelevant. Why? Because the power levels drop. You're taking an energy system and the power drops, and yet there's massive communication. Think about what you saw with that movie. There was distance communication from posterior to anterior. That's supposedly not really possible with those low power levels. Maybe that's why delta was up so much, because that's like a long distance carrier. Let me have the next one, please. I think the toad challenges neuroscience to review its fundamental assumptions of how the brain organizes itself. It's not that all we know is wrong, it's that there's too much that cannot be explained, especially from what we've seen. Let me have the next one, please. The takeaway is that it's not about power levels, and it's not about new neural pathways. I hear that all the brain, you do the toad, you have new neural pathways. That's bullshit. Why? You saw it. Those pathways were established before the administration, correct? Nature does not go out and blast a tunnel from here to San Francisco because it wants to go there. It takes an existing roadway. Secondly, it's not about specific anatomical regions, and there's no mysterious unused portion of the brain. What we saw in that video, which is the first of its kind, I think, is that these are sources that were there before and they were there after. There's nothing magical that's happening with that. Next. Now, the microdose study. This is what's emerging. There's, I think, someone about 9 that have finished it. There's no uniform finding in the but this. And it goes back to those two people. People spontaneously reported, but this happened. It's almost as if, again, that these entheogens have a way of finding some point that is somehow lacking in the system. I don't have the right words to use, and it's affecting that. Because there's not a consistency, no t-test. I thought it was avoidance. I thought it was mood. We saw mood, but it depended upon what happened to the person. One person had a TBI. It came out kind of like during the interview at the beginning. That person spent a lot of time on the couch hanging out. Afterwards, energy levels was normalized. I was struck by that. When I looked at the cue, there's no difference in the cue. Because I have a lot of experience with traumatic brain injury. A lot with the cue. I would have expected they're still slow alpha. I have a person now with energy and goes out and engage. That was really striking to me. So this hang-up we have about randomized clinical trials, it's horseshit. Entheogens affect a person in a unique way that is really special to that person's neurophysiology. The question, I think, underlying this is what is the deeper metric that tunes us? And this is what I'm going to get to. One thing, this was striking. I had a client that was suicidal. We had done neurofeedback for a year, and it was working slowly, Then I got fancy and I got a TDS unit and I stemmed her and it worked better. Her depression lifted. She started making more money at work. Then, against my better judgment, she started microdosing psilocybin at 0.35 milligrams every 3 days per James Fadiman. She wasn't part of the study, but I couldn't let this continue. She just really needed help. The stem, in 30 days, the stem plus neurofeedback plus psilocybin produced an amazing personal transformation in this person. This person now is the top salesperson in that corporation nationwide because of dealing with people, had his innate abilities came out. It was going there with the stem. I agree, it's accelerated, but I never saw anything happen until she started doing the psilocybin. That blew me out of the water. This to me is, I think this is the golden nugget that came out of the microdose study, that these things alone, but you start putting them into a cocktail like this, the brain seems to really respond. Let me have the next one, please. We're almost done. So, eyes closed recording showed significant shift in the Australian data set. Bold level down, right? Alpha power high. What that suggests to me is that the brains were just simply more efficient. They're working better. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it translates into a better sociopath or if it translates into world peace. I just know the brain was working more efficiently. Next, please. So, all these things that happen, when I look at this, when I look at all these things that don't make sense, I spend a lot of time in my work trying to make alpha power come up and try to make alpha power go down, or trying to shift this and that. These substances are moving things faster than I can possibly imagine. If you believe in the Bible, Paul on the road to Damascus falls down, has an encounter with God, and is changed and transformed. If you take Charles Dickens, yes, it's just a story, but how many times have we heard about personal transformations like that happening overnight? So let's look at this for a moment. You have a system that is completely changing rapidly. It's certainly, we see it with entheogens, and I'm certain you people have seen this much, much more than I have. How is that possible? I think the only analogy for me that works, and I don't like using metaphors anymore after what I've been through, but has anybody here ever worked with a wheelbarrow? Okay, you load that sucker up with bricks, it's a bitch to lift it, right? But once you lift it and it's in a sweet spot, you can do a lot with it, correct? If you lift it too much, the whole thing tumbles. I think what's happening, give me the next slide, I hope I put this here. I think what's happening, and why we have to look at entheogens and the effect on the EEG differently, it's not about power levels. I don't even think it's about connectivity right now. I think somewhere in there is a couple of harmonics that are interacting with each other. It's the whole kind of small effect, has a big thing at the end kind of thing. If you look at nodes vibrating on a string, somehow entheogens are affecting tiny minutiae parts I don't even think we can record. And that is what is, for this to drop like this, and this to go up like this, I can tell you in my field it's going to take 3 to 4 to 5 to 8 months of training to do that. It just doesn't happen. So what I'm suggesting to you is that the only way I think entheogens can do this is if somewhere in the EEG there is a metric that we haven't found, and my gut tells me that it's a combination of the heart rate variability, it's probably a harmonic off the heart, off the spinal cord, because the spine's a spring which sets up a compression force throughout the body. We have to think outside the EEG at this point. We have to think about the gut brain. These things are all tied at frequencies, and somewhere there is a sweet spot, like a tuning, that these entheogens are shifting. That's the only hypothesis I can come up with, and if you want to share one with me afterwards or tell me what you think, I would love to hear it, that can produce this type of a magnitude shift in such a short amount of time. Let me have the next one, please. So, I don't know why, but we should be blending entheogens with feedback, psychotherapy, short duration, there's no dependency. I know you guys know this, but for me, this was such an eye-opener. There's no toxic effects. I mean, I've sat with people in Mexico. I've talked with them afterwards on the way home. These interventions, it produces profound changes in people's lives. And we can't talk about it, we can't use it. And I am extremely frustrated. I was down in Mexico and I got bitten alive. I was down there doing some EEG recordings, and I didn't think I was going to do this, but I did it twice. And it was in a group setting, and for the first time, I began to have a sense of the other communication pathways that we can have within a group setting. And it was profound. It was absolutely profound. So why do I come here, and why do I take a risk and talk about this? Because the one thing I learned in my second time with Sandra, that if we do not learn these communication pathways that are different from language, I don't think we're going to survive as a species. That's watered down from the experience and download I got. It basically was, you are not going to survive unless you understand other ways of communicating, because we become so isolated from each other. I mean, if you think about this, I'm not trying to be all species-centric, but the dinosaurs were around for 300 fucking million years and didn't do jack shit. You know, we're around just a short amount of time. We managed to screw up most of the planet. And yet, in a very paradoxical way, we are the point of the spear of the evolution of this planet. And it is our heritage, and it is our duty, and we are epically failing at that. And that's been some of the experiences I've had, and this is why I do this, because I'm hoping that somebody is going to develop an interest in the brain, in EEG, and take this work forward. Because I figure I have maybe 5 years left. I'm 62, I can already tell my brain is slowing, I map it all the time. It's ridiculous. I kind of see it ticking down. It's like, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I forget this, I drop the ball here, but I keep going. I know I have a short amount of time left. And you don't. You guys can geek out. This is open source software. If at the age of 60 I can do this, and if you really want to do it, then get off your asses and do something. Because we're dying without it. Can I have the next one, please? These are the people that really helped me be here. Each of these people was absolutely fundamental, including some folks on the left side that want to rope a dope with sometime. But none of us got here without each other. And like I said at the very beginning of this talk, I really felt that all of us, that you all asked me to be here at this time. It sounds crazy, and I'll tell you why I think that. When I was in Afghanistan, as the last short story, I thought I was losing my mind. We were doing a bunch of neurofeedback, bunch of alpha theta. People were reporting aliens. They were reporting the grid that connected us all. We realized that consciousness, that's why we're never going to hear from ET, because consciousness across the galaxy communicates on the frequencies of consciousness. It doesn't communicate on electromagnetic waves, I know. And so, like, all this stuff is happening, and I thought to myself, if there's any psychologists in here, you'll understand what I'm about to say. I am incompetent. I have been compromised, so I was going down to the battalion surgeon's office to turn myself in and ask to be relieved of my command, because I felt that I was functioning psychotically in my environment because of all these experiences my clients were having. They swear I was there. I saw you on the other side. You were teaching. You were doing this. You looked older. You looked fatter. You looked younger. But it was all you, Doc V. What's going on? It was just fucking crazy. On the way down there, as I was taking a step on this dirt road at Spin Baldak, everything stopped for a moment, and there was no drugs involved. Everything stopped, and I looked around, and there was broken shards of mirrors everywhere. And every shard I saw myself in a different iteration across multiple lifespans. And I thought, yeah, this guy was gardening, this guy was doing this, older or younger, and some of them I looked at, they looked right back at me and said, he sees. Other ones I looked at, looked away as if somebody was looking at them. And I went, all of now contains forever? And then it was over with. So I went down and talked to my buddy, Captain Ray, and I said, I'm losing my mind, this is what happened. And he said, dude, it's a war zone, go back to work. So I went back to work, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I came here. Caitlin asked me to come. I didn't want to. It was pretty raw after the experiences down in Mexico, and it's been a very difficult road, but it is a mission. And if I sound evangelical, I apologize. But I hope at least I've had enough science here for you to know I'm not talking out my rear end. There's something going on here with these entheogens, and it's up to you folks, not me. It's up to you folks to really find out how we can help ourselves. So thank you for listening.
We have a few minutes for questions.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
No.
I wanted to ask about independent component analysis.
Yes.
So I definitely might not understand it at all, or I might understand it a little bit. I'll share what I thought I was getting, and then you probably tell me how it's different. But it sounds like you're able to take the signals and then sort of localize where stuff is coming from.
Yes and no. We can take the signals and we can decompose them into, and like if you and I are being recorded right now, we're talking simultaneously, we would be able to, with digital signal processing, to separate our two voices.
Right.
Mapping them in a source using dipole analysis, what we use called dipfit, is a very complicated mathematical procedure that makes a lot of assumptions on the thickness of blood vessels and whatnot. It's more dicey, but we can do it. So there's two stages involved. There's one is isolating the components because we need them spatially and temporally independent, and then we can work some Bojo mathematics and actually spatially localize them.
Okay.
All right? Does that help a little bit?
But so the end product is you could even say that this is because normally you think of EEG just on the cortex.
Correct.
And you could actually say anteriorly, this is where we think this is coming from.
And the problem with my field of neurofeedback is there's a lot of people making a lot of money saying with Loretta we can image and we can train these voxels. And what I mentioned in Santa Barbara, this is a waste of time. We should be training these sources. And the lights went off in people. It's like, what are you talking about? I said, train the fucking sources. Match the sources to the pathology. Where this is what we need to be doing. So it opens up an entirely world. But then I found out that actually Anton McKay from SCNN had actually done that in 2006. They have a poster that demonstrates that we can actually train the sources. The problem is that the computing power to actively take the independent components in real time and feed them back is pretty significant. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, sir?
Do you know Ray Alcon?
I don't know. I'm so new, and I've stepped on anybody's toes. I better apologize publicly.
No,
Yes.
you were, he was at the presentation.
Ryle.
I did the first one that did the
Oh,
meditation.
You've spoken with him on the phone.
okay. I have?
Ryle?
Oh, Ryle.
Ryle.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Yes.
And just give briefly, I know it's hard to explain, but what is an experience like on a 5-MeO? What is that 20-minute experience?
The problem, there's a twofold problem with that, with all due respect to what you're asking. I have learned that the more I try to talk about it, the more the experience becomes caricaturized and stereotyped in my mind, and language kind of drips all over it. But I can tell you this, that it is, I used to thought I was well read and studied a lot, but nothing I've ever read in any language, in any play from any era, prepared me for what was there. And the problem, as you saw in the movie, is that the very area that's involved in encoding and organizing that is basically offline. So I can't answer your question. I can tell you this on a whatever a feeling state is, and those that know me may, nothing for me was the same afterwards. Nothing has been the same since. That I can tell you. Look at Jim Carrey try to talk about DMT with all his funny face. You're like, it's like cat's got your tongue. Because it doesn't fit. And when I was in Mexico, I felt sane for the first time because I realized language doesn't work here. Cool. I'm not crazy. So, yes?
I just wanted to really thank you, sincerely thank you for doing what you're doing. Because, this information needs to get out. I was hooked on heroin 8 months ago, and the Ibogaine, Ayahuasca complete. To say that it changed my life would be an absolute understatement. And diagnosed manic to whatever, to being where I am today, I can't even. So I'm thank everybody for being here. This is great. This needs to get out, and not enough people know about this. And like you say, it's time for our species to wake up a little bit and stuff.
And it's hard to do that. When after I did the toad, I did go down to Mexico, and I did ayahuasca, and that was 5 hours of having my ass handed to me. I mean, she was gentle, but relentless. And the second time when I went down to Malinalco, she was a lot more peaceful.
Malinalco?
Yes.
That's where I...
Yeah, living clean out again. Yeah.
It's,
Dinesh.
I'm going to see him in Colombia.
There we go. Yeah.
Right on.
Big, tall Russian dude.
You're a Title 1?
Yeah.
Hey!
So, does that mean we're cool? Right. But thank you for saying that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So,
You kept nodding back there like you must be some compu scientist, neuroscientist. So that really worries me.
Have you heard of the Allen Brain Atlas?
Sorry?
The Allen Brain Atlas. Have you heard of this project?
No.
Essentially, they're trying to map some of the connectome at the anatomy level of neurons that they could, see that were correlated, firing together in different parts of the brain, and then from that kind of create a connectome of different regions. And so I was wondering if, if you compared your kind of causality maps to the actual gross anatomy.
I saw that. I remember that you're talking about. The problem is, and it's an excuse. I run a small company, and you try to stay in business, and then you try to do this stuff on a weekend, and then that doesn't work real well, and so these things like that I've been wanting to do really fall by the wayside. The problem I think we're having is that the EEG is fundamentally limited. I don't know if you folks know that. It sounds like it's like a window to another world. Every electrode can only measure vertically oriented pyramidal neurons. The ones that are like this, they can't read it. The ones that are like this can't read it. MEG can, magnetic encephalography, but you need $1 billion for that kind of equipment. Secondly, we really can't image into the cortex, the thalamus, the amygdala. Although people say you can with Loretta, you really can't count on that. So the mystery of where the 5-HT2 sub A receptors are that the tryptamines really affect, we really can't image those. But with the equipment that those folks have, with diffusion tensor imaging, I would really like to see what's going on, because for me, the absolute fundamental mystery is, with all that power gone, what is happening? Is it 1 million microstates now that are forming? And not Friston, well, if you read Friston's work, it's really good. Carhart Harris had this idea, well, it's all bound entropy, and like depression and OCD is bound, and if you loose that energy up, I think there's something to that. Whatever it is, the state is dissolving, and it's reforming, like the Terminator. It's like all melted, but it's reforming little micro tiny networks. That's where, and we can't image that. We can't, but I would love to do what you suggested, just out of curiosity. I've been accused of, well, you're just doing it because you're curious. It's like, I guess so. I look in the mirror because I'm curious, it's true, it's a fault of mine. Anybody else with a question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about the microdosing study. Could you talk a little bit more about how long people microdose for, and were you using just psilocybin, or were you using...
No, what we suggested was that people follow the Fadiman protocol, and they do it for 30 days. They do it one day. Well, we didn't suggest, I don't know what the right word is. We said, I don't know, some wording that was legally right. Excuse me for being wrong here. But at dose 1, skip 2, dose 1, and kept a journal. I microdosed LSD myself for 3 months, 4 months straight, and I kept a pretty good journal. I saw some pretty significant effects. I have a friend of mine that just has had a lousy marriage for 30 years. We're the same age, and cats and dogs, and no sex, and everybody hates everybody, and the kid goes into the room crying, and it was like, God, it's like a marriage from hell. And 2 weeks into psilocybin, 6 weeks later, he never touched it again. It was just miraculous, transformative. The problem about microdosing, it's not a problem. You don't know when to stop. There's clearly a where it stops being beneficial, and what's really curious is that the effects still keep giving.
Yeah.
The people that I've tracked with the psilocybin, I can't speak about the LSD, but the psilocybin, they did it for 6-8 weeks. And then they kind of ran out, they kind of petered out, and they were just like, good. I called them up, I'm fine, man. Best thing I ever did. So I really wish I had good data to give you, but I don't.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Sure.
I know that Octavio, like, from what I've heard, gives doses based on kind of his intuition a little bit. Were you guys like standardizing the doses?
No, we don't. First of all, I don't standardize anything. When we did the microdosing, we just kind of, well, you know, because you just kind of, yeah, there was kind of a suggestion here and there. I think with the LSD, we were kind of thinking, 10 to 12 mics, you know, but do what you want to do, and then who knows what people were doing.
It was observational.
Yeah, it was, thank you.
So
it was observational.
We said, hey, you know, Jim Fadiman has a protocol that you might be interested in doing, and so in general people were following that protocol, but we didn't require anybody to follow anything.
Sure.
You know, they could have just walked in and got a free EEG and not done any of it.
Yeah.
And we can't mandate that they were doing illegal drug consumption.
And this is what really sucks, because most studies exclude people that need it the most. And that's horrible, because entheogens have their most impact on people that need it the most. I mean, there are people in the microdose study, they clearly didn't need it, and we didn't really see, there's some changes. But the people that kind of led on while they were there, those where we saw some really interesting changes, but the N was so small that when we analyzed stuff, it just washed out. What we are going to do, based on the new finding that this is a state system, that's what I think, there's a system shift. We're going to apply some deep machine learning algorithms that my buddy has come across, and we're going to run the data sets that we have for the N of 9, which really turns out to, what's 2 times 9? Actually, what's 4 times 9? So we got 36. We have 36 data sets, and what's 36 times 19? That's how many channels that we can extract information. That's enough. So we might be able to see what's going on. I think where I was really off was that I should have combined heart rate variability. And nobody is really doing that. We're not thinking more systemically. So, but anyway, if there's any other questions, I know it's hot. You guys, we had a late start. I so appreciate you being here. Talk to me afterwards. Caitlin has a card if you want a card. But I really hope that somebody here picks up a banner and gets some stuff done. So thank you.
Thank you.